Many people regard you as a personification of Ubuntu. What do you understand Ubuntu to be?
In the old days when we were young, a traveler through a country would stop at a village and he didn't have to ask for food or for water. Once he stops, the people give him food, entertain him. That is one aspect of Ubuntu, but it will have various aspects. Ubuntu does not mean that people should not enrich themselves. The question, therefore, is, are you going to do so in order to enable the community around you to be able to improve? These are the important things in life. And if one can do that, you have done something very important which will be appreciated.
The open source report on the 9th of December 2018, beaming from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network, part of our family of programs from WBRN Radio. We're, of course, broadcasting from the Jerry Pippin Broadcasting booth, and our sponsor is Cranston Saltware MA here. Some reflections in this broadcast on the merger between between IBM and Red Hat. Actually, it was IBM bought out Red Hat, and it's all about the cloud. We'll have some more on the cloud, the Red Hat buyout, as we move along. What we normally do is talk about the kernel. We are currently using, 4.19.7, and let me just check very quickly and see what the latest stable kernel is from where you can always get your kernels. The Linux kernels, they're always there, and the Linux kernel archives is where we're going. The latest stable kernel is 4.1.98. We're using the Slackware version. We're 0.7, and the release candidate is 4.205 is the release candidate, and basically this is where it is. So we're pretty current here, actually, moving along. The idea of the stable candidate, you can of course upgrade your kernel by either using a tarball or obviously a patch and move along. One of the beauties of Slackware is that the distribution is well received. You can update it to not only the kernel but other your various libraries, etc. And those are the things that need to be upgraded from time to time. Let's get on with it here. We'll start out with Apple and repairs, and we'll be talking a little about repairs in this broadcast. And one of the YouTube people, and we'll put a link to his, he's operating out of London. It's called, I believe, the Repair School. Does a very good job if you want to learn how to repair laptops, portable phones, etc., mobile phones, I should say, and various other things, and how to arrange your shop, and if you want to go in business for yourself. One of the things we talk about in open source is sustainability, and the whole movement is around Libre software, open source, sustainability, and of course security. And we talk about all those things in our broadcasts and try to get them all together, basically speaking. So we'll start with Apple. This is a very good article here. How Apple other manufacturers attack your right to repair their products. This is from the Los Angeles Times. It's been sitting on the desktop since November the 14th. Anyway, for 10 years, and this is Banstead here. John Banstead had a small but profitable business buying old Apple laptops in bulk, refinishing them by hand, selling them to wholesalers via Amazon for about $150. There are also PC types on the other PC side that do basically about the same thing. They were good working machines, saved from obsolescence to bring Apple experience to buyers who couldn't afford the company's super premium prices. I'd give those computers a second life. That's what Bunstead, told me from his home in Minneapolis. But come January the 4th, a big chunk of this market will disappear. That's when Amazon will close off access to its website for unauthorized Apple resellers. It's something we don't hear very much about. I can remember in the old days when we actually did repair Apples. There was an Apple authorized deal, a major one, and not very far from where our offices were, and that deal was kind of interesting. One day, Apple decided they would put in an Apple store, didn't tell him about it, and thus he was out of business. There were about 20 people that worked in that particular authorized shop. They have limited options. Either try to obtain a reseller's authorization from Apple, not easy, or meet Amazon's specifications for sellers of refurbished merchandise, which includes proof that they have sold 2.5 million in Apple goods to major retailers or wireless carriers over 90 days. He couldn't do that. If you can't repair stuff, you are forced to participate in the throwaway market. People who have been selling MacBooks or other Apple products are pretty much going to be cut off from the Amazon marketplace, according to Bunstead. The new restrictions coincide with a deal announced on the 9th of November by Amazon and Apple, making new iPads, iPhones, Apple Watches available on Amazon for the first time. The online merchant previously sold Apple computers only, and according to the reseller community, views the rule as an offshoot of Apple's well-known hostility to third-party repairs of its products, and that places the move squarely in the crosshairs of a bulging right of repair movement. The right of repair may not rank up there with the inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, but for modern consumers, it's meaningful on multiple levels. The concept of ownership and privacy of personal, economic, and environmental sustainability. Fundamentally, it's about who owns our devices and who controls what we can do with them. And that is from Kyle Wiens, the co-founder of iFixit, which distributes free repair guides for thousands of consumer products and sells replacement parts and tools. Wiens, I suppose Viens, is also a director of the Repair Association, which promotes legislation aimed at protecting the right to repair. In the old world, answer clearly as you. No longer, as consumer products have become more complex, manufacturers have found new ways to interfere with repairs by anyone but authorized services, often for higher fees. Refrigerators and other household, and this is also under the open source umbrella, and other appliances now come with electronic components or passwords that can only be reset with equipment or code held by the manufacturer, or kill switches that make the product inoperable if a modular is replaced with a non-manufacturer version, or merely opened by an unauthorized repair. Farmers in the Midwest have been with a knockdown battle with John Deere and Company over its refusal to provide full access the software codes embedded in tractors, forcing farmers to ship malfunctioning machinery to distant authorized shops. Manufacturers have asserted that some repair amount to copyright infringement because by bypassing or altering a copyrighted source code, electronic markers erect multiple obstacles to hands-on repair, including glued-in batteries, circuit boards, and memory cards. Apple has been accused of taking an aggressive, especially aggressive stance against third-party repairs, both on hardware and software. Its laptops are held together with proprietary screws, needing special tools. I remember that to remove them. For years, the device's memory and storage devices had been glued into the inside, so buyers had to specify those components at the moment of sale, usually for higher prices than the equivalent. In 2016, upgrade to an iPhone operating system turned the device mute, paperweight if they detected that non-Apple hardware had been installed. Apple later released a fix for the notorious Error 53 bug, claiming that it had gone public by mistake. This month, Apple acknowledged its newest laptops carry a chip that will shut down the unit if replacement hardware has been installed, unless the hardware has been configured with software tools distributed only to Apple stores and company-certified technicians. Apple has also been part of the tech industry coalition that has lobbied against the right to repair legislation in more than a dozen states. The company direct involvement in these campaigns by organizing such as a Consumer Technology Association, Computing Technology Association, which Apple is a member or associate, is murky. But a Nebraska state legislator disclosed last year that she had been visited personally by an Apple lobbyist with a warning that the right to repair measures she was sponsoring would turn the state into a mecca for bad actors, such as hackers. Manufacturers have multiple reasons for limiting repair options. One is the profit from short-term obsolescence. If you can't repair stuff, you are forced to participate in a throwaway market. That is from Gary Gordon Bryant, Executive Director of the Repair Association. Another is to extract revenue from captive repair services. Authorized repairers typically have to pay a fee for their certification. And let me finish this up. Very, very long article here. In 2012, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts voters enacted a measure guaranteeing vehicle owners and independent repair shops access to the same diagnostic and repair information provided to dealers and authorized shops. Seeing the writing on the wall, the automobile industry agreed in 2014 to expand that right nationwide, starting with the model in 2018. But it shouldn't count as a deterred manufacturer. Those steps forward could be encoded in an alliance between dominant manufacturers, Apple, say, and a dominant retailer such as Amazon. This is one of the things that's happening to balance of power between manufacturers and consumers. Shift, Weens said, if Amazon controls 50% of the dollars spent online, and Apple can say, you can sell our products, but only if you control who sells our used products. In the old days, TV repair men were popular members of the American Society. The guy who would come to your house, stick his hands in any manufacturer's TV and set and find burnout tubes needing repair. I remember that. Used to do it myself. And throwaway culture has made such figures into historic relics at our expense and the price of filling landfills with mountains of electronic trash. The right to repair movement wants to bring them back, and we endorse wholly that movement and its in its entirety, I should say. Let me just, we're going to have to move back up here once more. And, oops. This is Google. While we're here, this is from the Gizmo Do magazine here. Anyway, after the historic Google walkout, one of big tech's problems is still being ignored. And this is on the 11th of November. Do no evil. That was a Google thing. Last month, thousands of staffers walked out of Google offices around the world, calling for a more inclusive company culture built around equality, dignity, and respect. Amongst the walkout organizers, 5 demands was for the company to end its forced arbitration for both harassment and discrimination cases. The company only eliminated the former. The policy shows that the leadership still doesn't understand how closely discrimination correlates to harassment. That is from Tenju Gupta, an Apple worker and one of the walkout organizers, told Gizmo in an email. Google chose to continue to preserve the present-day structure, imbalances of power that let harassment and discrimination flourish in all forms. Forced arbitration, and this is also goes into the credit card industry, is a practice tech companies have highly enforced, at least in part to maintain their public image. It means that a worker waives their right to trial by jury, and instead is forced to settle any dispute behind closed doors by a mutual third party. It's got to be such a lucrative racket. I remember a federal judge I used to appear before, and when he retired, he went into being an arbitrator. It wasn't until Google walkout, what is likely the largest collective demonstration of tech workers to date, that the company made changes to its arbitration agreements, and in classic Silicon Valley fashion, other companies began acting with urgency in the shadow of their competition. But Google was not the first. It was merely the biggest and the loudest. In fact, it was Microsoft that started the trend, publicly stating last December that it was eliminating those agreements for sexual harassment claims. Uber, who has been hit there, incidentally, who has a top secret IPO going now, made the same changes 6 months ago. A day after Google announced its change to mandatory arbitration misconduct cases, Facebook did the same. And that's one of the things to remember, that all of these companies are playing la-la-la and hopscotch with each other. Airbus and Microsoft said they are eliminating forced arbitration for discrimination cases as well as those involving sexual misconduct. The Me Too movement over the last few years has thrust into the spotlight ways in which executives have ignored or mishandled or even contributed to systematic sexual discrimination issues within their walls by eliminating forced arbitration. This is for sexual harassment. Now, we don't hear anything here about racial discrimination. The industry is ripe with discrimination issues, which the company has for years publicly exalted their diversity and inclusion. Now, this is one of the things that with Facebook, Google, they talk about their diversity action, but it is only window dressing. They present at various conferences, development conferences, etc., people of color as an example of their quote-unquote diversity and inclusion. But those are only rare instances. By only eliminating arbitration for sexual harassment claims, particularly they do it after a PR crisis. But the most important action out there is racial discrimination, period. Now, there's a nonprofit CEO of Project Include. That's a nonprofit working towards providing tech companies with diversity and inclusion. Oh, this is solutions. One of those types of operations. Elaine Payot, I suppose, accuses venture capital firms of this is Perkins Crutchfield and buyers of gender discrimination. One of the things about these types of organizations, although they accuse people, they're also soliciting business. Allowing people to litigate publicly helps address the problem at the end of the process, but more work needs to be done to prevent the problem in the first place. No doubt about that, and this is where her organization, I suppose, comes in. Adding discrimination to the ban on forced arbitration is a small second step. Well, it's a very big second step. We've added 15 leading tech companies where they require their workers to agree to force arbitration for discrimination claims, and if so, they plan to eliminate them. These companies, and we're naming them right now: Apple, Google, Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, Tesla, SpaceX, Verizon, Uber, Lyft, Airbus, and eBay, Reddit, Microsoft, and Stack. Only 5 companies are confirmed to Gizmo that they have either recently eliminated forced arbitration, both for harassment and discrimination claims, or they have never had these agreements. When asked if they would eliminate them from forced arbitration for discrimination, the Google spokesman said the company uses arbitration for most employment matters in the U.S. because the company believes it's the most effective for all parties, which is a downright lie. In general, generally faster than proceeding in court. Well, yeah, because the decks are stacked against one. And let's see, Airbus here didn't respond, nor did Apple and SpaceX. And one thing to remember about all of these organizations, they are non-union. And the unions have been basically frozen out, but there's organized efforts there. And if you're going to have a Libra software, Libra hardware, you have to be around an organizing effort with the proprietary software vendors, no doubt about it. Reddit, Verizon, and Amazon. Now, Verizon does have trade unions. Amazon does not. But some contractors do have arbitration clauses in their contract. Microsoft told Gizmos that it's eliminating forced arbitration for a limited number of workers. It applies to both for discrimination and harassment. Now, limited number. Twitter claims it's never had forced arbitration agreements for workers. However, a class action lawsuit from a former Twitter worker, Tanya Hoon, filed against the company in March of 2015, said virtually all workers hired in the last 18 months had agreed to arbitration. While Facebook and eBay announced early this month they were eliminating forced arbitration for sexual harassment, like Google never offered an explanation on why they weren't eliminating it for discrimination. Now, this is one of the things that Operation Push has been working on, and it should work on, is dealing with cases of discrimination, no doubt about it. Mike Subbett, an attorney representing employee discrimination and harassment cases for 25 years, referring to tech companies to start eliminating some forced arbitration, but it's a very cynical political move, and this is one of the big problems. They are very cynical political moves, and in an age that they've created of social media, people understand that these are nothing more than very cynical moves that will get resolved in the political field. You can expect that the new Congress will have these Facebook characters appear before it, and it will not be a friendly audience. But also at the same time, all of these characters have highly paid lobbyists around, and we'll finish. In addition to its complicating the system for dealing with sensitive issues, companies are sending a clear message to their workforces and to the public. when it comes to eradicating systematic issues. Some take priority over others, and more often nothing happens at all unless the company wants to make it look like it cares. So that is a very big problem, and the walkout itself was historic. No doubt about that. It highlighted much of what has been happening in the software industry. We'll take a quick break here as we attend to other issues. Now we move to the cloud, and we'll explore where Red Hat is and some of the other pressing issues out there. We'll start with InfoQ. A very interesting article here has been sitting around for a while. This was on November the 21st. Will cloud computing kill open source development? And some of the key takeaways there: will open source developments not going to disappear? The future of commercial open source vendors is not very promising. Production support tools and consulting opportunities have diminished with the rise of full managed services. Cloud providers are adopting open source software, making it commercially available without necessarily adding value. A very big key there that every business person is taught: the idea of adding value and supporting future development. No industry consensus exists on the best way to fund open source development. Many continue to believe that open source software should be free. That's Libra software there. Models such as open core and dual licensing seem to be the most promising, and I disagree there. Open source licensing is probably going to become more restrictive about commercial use. There is no guarantee that past commercial open source stories will be replicated in the future. And the Reddit changes of the licensing of some of their enterprise modules to be licensed under the Apache 2.plus Common Clause. These modules could not be used as standalone commercial service as software. They are probably aimed at cloud providers. The surrounding controversy has raised an issue that has been lurking in the open source community for a while. The best cause for open source software has been with software infrastructure, the best case, rather than software application projects. If cloud computing companies become the infrastructure providers for software, their market control might allow them to take over open source projects and sell those software services at a lower price point than companies who market open source services. And these are some of the people here. I won't go into that as much. You can see that on the Cranston Software Twitter feed, this particular article here. And you can also see it on the Cranston webpage. And we'll append this actually on the program. That's the better way of doing it. There is a discussion here, Paul Dix, Matt Kilm, and Heather Mika. And she is an attorney, and there are a number of models that I think could be successful. This is Paul Nix talking here. The first is what I would call the open source exhaust. It comes out of a big company like Google, Facebook, etc. When some of the software they're developing is deemed not to be part of their key intellectual property. This kind of software can be thought of as a liability on the balance sheet in a structured software that you require to run your business logic. And this is around business logic for businesses looking to have their primary revenue stream be associated with development of some open source project. Their options are very limited. I believe that the only proverbial model at this point is open core. The company develops closed source software that complements or adds a new function to open source software when it is offered as either a host, that is SAS, software as a service offering, or an on-premise enterprise software. And from Matt Kim, there is a variety of business models that have been tried. They've all boiled down to some variants of the following simplistic description. Open core, a portion of the software which is a portion of is behind the paywall. Software as a service runs the open source as a service on behalf of the consumer. Service computer supply changes from various support and development than a consumer might use open source, OSS they call it. Hebemika, the only thing you really can do with open source software is self-license it to exploit it, but there's still plenty of room to make money in private business development open source software. You just have to know what you are selling and what you are giving away. Pure open source businesses are quite rare. Red Hat is an extraordinarily successful example. A pure open source business sells services, mainly maintenance and support, but it also sells quality control. Customers buy the products, not the license. You have a business selling open source packages if you put a lot of work into the quality control or packaging. But then effectively you are selling a reliance on your reputation. Most open source businesses make money with variation on the razor blade model, famously and perhaps apocalyptically attributed to King Gillette. Given that the razor and the seller of the blades, the razor is the open source software. The blade takes a lot of forms. Some are upsell models, often called open source core. Others are alternative rights, dual licensing of the same, as such as MySQL. MySQL has fallen a bit out of business. Of course, it was bought out by Oracle. Some are widget type of situations, selling hardware. This used to be the model that runs on open source, like other IoT products, and some are access, and embargo model that sells access to a code before it is publicly released. And where variants like the commons clause on some. So this is some of the stuff here. We'll leave it, and let me just go back here to make sure. Well, we'll get to this in a minute here. A little about Wendy's here, kind of interesting. Wendy's chose an open source WCM, is out of Austin, Texas. Wendy's sells 1.5 million burgers a day via its website. And of all that scale, when it came time to update the back-end software supporting it, it chose WCMS. Early this year, the fast food giants saw a simple design, but a more complex data tracking for personalization. Thus, the open source WCMS platform vendor beat out 24 other proprietary vendors here. Chances are your organization doesn't have such a large and complicated work site, and where you can grab this particular platform and you can go with it. I don't think you'll be able to hear the audio here. We'll see.
Hi, it's Don Fluckinger on site at Acquia Engage Conference in Austin, Texas. I'm here with Michael Mancuso. He is head of digital analytics for Wendy's, but he's also product owner for Wendy's.com. So that means he sells an awful lot of burgers online. What did you say? 1.5 million a year?
So I will do 1.5 million per day.
I mean a day. I meant that.
It is an incredible amount of food that we sell, and it's almost inconceivable to think that 1/10 of the U.S. population visits our website every year.
Well, thanks for joining us today. You recently changed from a legacy content management system to open source Acquia based on Drupal for your website, and that's no small endeavor when you have 1/10 of the American population using your app or your website or whatnot. So we're going to discuss sort of how that buying decision was made. So walk me through sort of what was it like before, and how did you know that it was time to do a rip and replace at the scale we're talking about here?
You know, it wasn't an easy decision to come to. Anytime you're looking at a site that has such a tremendous volume of users and a lot of historical content, there's complexity that goes into this that often can cause detrimental business impact if it's not done properly. For us, it came to, I was spending a lot of developer resources to bring content to life, and I wasn't able to move at the speed our other channels were moving to get our new thoughts and to get our new products out to customers. Our approach was, it's an approach that can be universally taken whether you're a small business or a large enterprise. And it really focuses on centering in on the business problems you're trying to solve. Now, if you're not an empowered decision maker in your organization, ask someone in your C-suite, ask someone who is, what keeps you up at night? When you're looking at how to align your strategy to purchasing a new content management system, see where there can be impact on solving some of those issues. If you are a decision maker, you should have a pretty good understanding of the KPIs that you need to drive as a business. Use that as a standard candle when evaluating features and functionality. The approach we took was meeting with each of the different groups that interacted with the site today, and we asked them a few simple questions. So first, how is your department measured this year? And how are you trying to move your department ahead? Then, based on that, how can you help our customers? If there's features or functionality that don't directly align to the business strategy or to helping customers, it's time to reevaluate those, because a lot of the complexity in these projects comes from moving over legacy concepts and ideas that may not be used but are rampant. And we had no shortage.
Right, you didn't want to port bad processes to the new site, so you had, sort of had to clean out your house before you went onto the platform.
We did, and the outcome of these meetings, we created a balanced scorecard. So by department, I understood the business impact of the different features and functionality we were asking for, and the types of content we wanted to migrate. From there, I'll be the first to say, you don't know what you don't know, and even in my role, I'm very comfortable that there is a lot I don't know. So we took this balanced scorecard and built a very mini RFP, you could say, that was hyper-focused to what Wendy's needed. And we sent that out to 25 different content management system vendors. We're one of the types of organizations where you may not necessarily be a leader with Gartner or Forrester, but if you have compelling business value and can fit into our ecosystem, we'll evaluate you equally. In doing that, we learned an insane amount about content management systems. And Acquia managed to hit every sweet spot we needed perfectly. Would I say that that is true for every type of company? Probably not, and you should go through your own due diligence. But I was unbelievably impressed with what we saw during that part of the process and the level of rigor our teams dug in, because anytime I see perfect on a scorecard, I don't know about you, but I get very nervous that either I've asked the wrong questions or I'm not getting the right answer.
From a pipeline that Aqua, it's an open source WCM platform vendor out there, and we'll link to their site. Aqua, this is new rules for WC tools, enhanced search experience, and Aqua methodically brings enriched content in e-commerce. This is part of it out here. Launches commercial manager to integrate integrate enriched content with e-commerce. Aqua continues to connect. It is a Drupal and so forth and so on. Let me just move along here. This is the Internet of Things. These are predictions. This is from Tech Republic in 2019 5 predictions. Bundled internet services will try to motivate a slow consumer market. The vision of interconnectivity, centralized smart homes is currently more of the enterprise's dream rather than the consumer. Says a report. Right now, consumers are easing into smart home devices. Industry buying one application-enabled device at a time. And we'll see the reality of connecting many different devices. Microsoft has been dreaming of this for a very, very long time. Incidentally, there's some nice open source types we've talked about before. The Internet of Things, an umbrella term, will diminish. The conversation is going to shift away from ambiguous buzzwords to the actual use of technology, says the report. The Internet of Things is not viable in and in itself. It's about the use case solution there. And 3, the Internet of Things vendors will compete to be the destination. Platforms will be narrowing their scope in 2019. In Pacific cases, according to this, cyber criminals will target small cities. Cities are becoming more smart and smarter in efforts to improve efficiency in operations, the report says, but many cities aren't bringing security to connect their devices. A market for the Internet of Things managed services will develop the next year. Internet of Things run market, says the report, and the fragmented access there. So the takeaways here, the vendors will be merging together to specialize in more use cases. That is from Forrester. And cyber criminals will be targeting smaller, smart cities and managed services, creating a new markets. That is some of what is out here from the Tech Republic. We'll be doing a special program on 2018, 2009, what is actually happening, and see where things are going. Let's see. We'll talk about Google here. Well, we'll come back to them if we have time as we move along here to Malware Bytes. We do talk about security. This is from their blog. Under the Radar reports examine modern threats and future technologies. and one can download this, some of what TrickBot, and ScoreEach and SamSam and PowerShell as an attack vector. If you haven't heard enough from us, the threat landscape is changing. It's always changing. The new malwares we see being developed and deployed in the wild have features and techniques that allow them to go beyond what they were originally able to do, either for the purpose or additional infection or evasion of detection. And these were some of those out here, and we'll just put this on, and I'll finish this up. Download Radar there. You can do that. Thus, the spreading capabilities of future threats are unknown, and we have to prepare people to protect their data online. Not all is bad news in security, though. We have a lot going for us. Behavior detection, blocking at delivery, self-defense modes. These features are effective at combating today's threats, and we'll see those out there. So, malware bites. And we'll just briefly here, this is from Spectrum. Women leave tech jobs because they can't climb the ladder. This is something we've had sitting around here from a very, very long time. While companies taught their diversity programs, this is back to our introductory on Google, aimed at attracting women to tech. The percentage of women with computer science careers have fallen in recent years, and women lead the field at a much higher rate than men. There's been a number of theories about why this is happening. Sexual harassment has gotten a lot of recent attention. Then there is a study funded by the National Science Foundation suggests the problem is that men have all the fun and at least an overwhelming share of it, while women in tech end up with grunt tasks. Others have pointed to life work balances. That's been the old crutch. This week, job search firm Indeed released its analysis of the problem. According to the survey Indeed conducted, 1,000 women, that'd be a fairly good survey. The glass ceiling that is pushing them out are less the lack of cognitivity, the lack of growth and a trajectory. 28% of the respondents cite career growth issues as the reason they leave their jobs. That's a glass ceiling. The fact that there is a glass ceiling in tech is no surprise, even though as YouTube's CEO there, Susan Wojcik, said in a speech at the Grace Harper celebration. Grace Harper was a famous computer scientist, was an admiral. Women have no special skills that enable them to run tech companies. They're just way more of them, and they are more aggressive about going to the next level. According to Indeed survey, only 53% of respondents believe they will have the same chance of entering a company senior manager in their ranks as their male peers. The lack of advancement of women to leadership is particularly affecting women between the age of 25 and 24. Younger women have a bigger issue with the lack of female leadership in general. 24% indicate they are likely to leave a job because of a lack of female leaders in the company. Salaries are another reason that women are dissatisfied, while the respondents cite salary as the important factor in weighing for a job. Nearly half of the respondents to the Indeed survey, 46% said they believe that male peers get paid more than they do, and critically only 53% feel that they dare ask for a promotion or raise to ratify the disparity. So this is one of the big things. I'm glad we got this in here. These are some of the issues here: lack of career growth, slow salary growth. That was 28%, 24% for slow salary growth. Poor management, 24.40. We'll just round this out. Company culture was not a fit, 11%. I did not leave voluntarily, 7%. I have never left a job, 7%. Limited mentorship. Didn't hear much of that. Career changes faced by women according to Indeed survey. Wage growth, bias or discrimination, 23%. That was 45% for wage growth. The inability to break into management leadership roles, switching to another career was 19%. It was 20% for the former. Sex harassment, 12%, way down there. We got this from a Spectrum. And let me just referring something from the Creative Commons, which we operate under that license, the new Canadian copyright reform and shrinks. This is from the new NAFTA shrinks, and the public domain is one of the things we've looked at. As Canada currently observes, the minimum term of copyrights is required by the Berne Convention, which is the life of the author plus 50 years. Under the new regime signatures, this is a new Trump-produced thing. It would be the life term of the author plus 70 years. So in other words, they're raising that 20 years. And the extent to already lengthy copyright terms will discourage new creativity in Canada. Creative Commons started with the public domain, filling out the mission in protecting and expanding public domain, which we developed tools to better mark and dedicate content in the public domain. The end of copyright protection in a work allows for the production of new work, and which lengthens to strike a balance in Canada. The handling of Ian Fleming's literary character James Bond, for example, entered the public domain on January the 1st of 2015. This allowed Canadian authors Nichols and Ashby to produce a license expired an anthology of unauthorized 007 stories there in Canada. So these are some of the things that are happening here. The text shows the powerful hand of U.S. copyright interests. A copyright extension that was floated, that was the early version of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which bit the dust. The Creative Commons joined with dozens of organizations to push back after Trump withdrew the U.S. From that particular setup. This is one of the things to remember. There are countless competing issues in massive new trade agreements like the USM. That's the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, and the concerns are there. So we thought we would bring that to you from the Creative Commons. And let me just make sure we have... okay. Now let's see if we can take another break here. Like a lot of breaks here. And get in the red hat as we conclude our broadcast. We'll be right back. This is a Red Hat story. Again, we've been working on this report for some time, so it has made the news. This was on the 28th of October. It's official. IBM is acquiring the software company Red Hat for $34 billion. And we'll get to it. IBM will pay $190 per share for the company. It's described as the world's leading provider of open source cloud software premium more than 60%. Basically, will remain committed, according to IBM, to Red Hat's open source governance, open source contribution, participation in the open source community, and development models, and foster its widespread development ecosystem. Now, IBM and Red Hat also continue to build and enhance Red Hat's partnership, including those major cloud providers such as Amazon Services, Azure, the Google Cloud, and in addition to the IBM Cloud. Red Hat will join the IBM hybrid cloud team as a distinct unit, preserving the independence and neutrality of Red Hat open source development heritage and a commitment. Red Hat will be led by Jim Whitehurst and Red Hat's career management team. IBM will become the world's number one hybrid cloud provider, offering the company's only open cloud solution that will unlock value. That's according to Jenny Remedy, the chair of IBM. Joining forces with IBM will bring us a greater scale there, according to them. This is interesting within itself, for the acquisition is a game changer. It changes everything about the cloud market. That's according to the president, of course, chief executive, Jenny Remedy. And become the number one hybrid cloud. Most companies today are only 20% along the cloud journey, renting computer power to cut costs. She said the next 80% is about unlocking real business value, driving growth. In the next chapter of the cloud, it requires shifting business applications to the hybrid cloud, extracting more data, optimizing every part of the business, from the supply chain to sales. Open source is the default choice for modern IT solutions, and I am incredibly proud of the role Red Hat plays. That is their president there, and joining forces with IBM. The acquisition brings together the best-in-class hybrid cloud provider with enable companies to securely move more business applications to the cloud. However, research shows that 80% of the business workload has yet to move to the cloud. That's a very important figure there. This prevents the portability of data applications across multiple clouds, data security in multiple cloud environments, and consistent cloud management. Red Hat and IBM will strongly be positioned to address the issue and accelerate hybrid multi-cloud adaptation. We'll see. Drive faster portability, security of data across multiple public and private clouds with consistent cloud management. In doing so, they will draw upon the shared leadership in key technologies such as Linux, containers, Kubernetes, multiple cloud management, and cloud management automation. IBM and Red Hat, I remember when that happened 20 years ago, that the then president of IBM decided to spend $1 billion on Linux. And the reason for that was that they were competing against Microsoft. IBM was not selling operating systems at the time. They were selling applications and hardware. Today, less hardware and more applications. Collaborating with Red Hat to help develop and grow enterprise-grade Linux, and more recently to bring enterprise Kubernetes and hybrid cloud solutions to customers. The innovation has become a core technology within IBM. $19 billion hybrid cloud business between IBM and Red Hat. They contribute more open source software to the community, and this is where we came in talking about that. Red Hat will remain committed to continual freedom of open source via such efforts as GPL, the Cooperative Commitment, and the Open Source Innovation Network. and we'll continue to build and enhance Red Hat partnerships. We talked about that. One of the big drawbacks here in IBM, and this will be the infamous being an IBM a reseller over the years and an IBM developer. We don't presently sell IBM products. Let me get that straight. But anyway, nonetheless, it's the selling culture of IBM. I remember when Linux came in there, and they first put Red Hat in. We went to training sessions, and some old Unix jockeys, IBM's had their own version of Unix. That's pretty much disappeared now. But these characters were trying to run a Red Hat, trying to get the Red Hat, I forget which edition it was. We're talking about 18 years ago or something like that. Might have been actually more than that, 19, almost 20 years ago. They were very unfamiliar with Red Hat. We were getting what they call instant spinning it up, and for us there was no problem at all. We were used to not only with Red Hat but primarily with Slackware, taking down versions, putting up versions. We do that sometimes twice in a day. The versions and the kernels and everything were not, they were all on just one little CD at that time, or maybe perhaps two. Anyway, we did it all the time, and again, part of the problem was they were using the old technical staff, and they were trying to train people about Linux that really didn't know anything about it. They'd actually hired people, and they'd read a little bulletin, probably one and a half pages, and that was all they knew of Linux, literally. And the global services, which is a big selling arm, were trying to sell a service that they honestly didn't know what they were doing. And that is one of the problems that have been hurdles for IBM to climb. And they are behind Amazon services and actually Azure. What Microsoft has done is Microsoft went from just being a proprietary operation, selling enterprise licenses to consumers, etc., to going into the cloud business and moving their office suites, all of that to the cloud. Now, they still sell Windows, yes, but that is a low portion of their business. All of the enterprise stuff is now in the cloud, so you're not only buying licenses in the cloud, you're buying storage opportunities, as I guess they call them, in the cloud. 360 is the office suites, that's Outlook, Office, and whatever else they are pawning off. All of that is now only in the cloud. So that is the only way you can get those particular items. And back when the cloud came in, everybody, including the kitchen sink, was trying to sell something called a cloud. Many of those have disappeared out of the ball game, and their clouds are virtually non-existent. But you still have public-private clouds. You can buy rack space, and you'll be in the cloud, which many small enterprises do that don't have their own servers on their premises. And a lot of them do have their own servers on their premises, or they have servers in data centers that are dedicated only to them. That's why only 80% are out there, and certain kinds of software are put out in the cloud. And then you have people that just, the Dropboxes of the world, the Apples of the world, and various other people. You can get an account at Amazon services. You have Watson out there from IBM. You can buy their services as needed. In other words, their clouds, and you can go up and set up your technology there. So this is basically what it is all about. Let me just get another statistic here. This is from Bloomberg, and we'll finish up. Cloud growth slows down the loom, suggesting tech booms is near the peak. This was on the October the 26th from Ian King. The struggling growth of cloud computing can't go on forever, reports from tech companies. that make data center hardware and sell services suggest the industry's expansion is cooling. Excuse me. Western Digital, the old chip hard drive makers of memory chips, nearly listed everything that is suddenly wrong with the industry when it gave disappointing forecasts on Thursday. A boom in spending by cloud services providers such as Amazon is showing signs of slowing, and there is too much supply of memory chips in the industry. Trade with China, monetary policy, foreign exchange fluctuation are of concern to the people at Western Digital, while the technology executives can do little about international relations, government policies, etc. Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet, Google are the three biggest providers of these services, and some indication the pace of their spending is slowing. Also, the flood of investment on equipment needed to house data and make the sense of it has been critical to the rise in the fortunes of the computer component industry. The last few years, while the cloud revenue growth rates reported for the third quarter were about 45%, still higher than a year earlier. Over the next 5 years, growth will eventually tail off, and this will be the law of large numbers kicking in. That's according to John Dimsdale. He's a chief analyst and managing director at Synergy Research Group. Investors seem to be getting the message. Amazon fell 10% on Friday. Alphabet was down 4.6%. Now, this is back in October. Western Digital 20%. ISE Cloud Computing Index has decreased 11% in October, outpacing the drop of 7.8% in the S&P. Let me go down here a little more. Growth from Google's main business came in at 20%, slower than the last period. Amazon, the retailer, reported, of course, some problems also. So if we look at the let's get back to this index here. The SEC Cloud Index. See if we can get an update on it. I'm not sure if we can as we conclude. This is live while we're actually broadcasting here. I think we can get it here. No data to display. Cloud Computing Index is down 3.110, and the last was at 544.81 is what we have here for it. And this is on the NASDAQ. The history of it. Well, it's been up and it's been down in December. And we're at, 556.944. The high was 561 and the low was 545. So that is where it is, and I'm not sure. Well, doesn't really say, but anyway, that is what we have. And which is a good place for this to end our open source report on the 9th of December, 2018. This is MA at Cranston in the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth. Good day, and we'll try to make these, incidentally, a little editorial note here. In the month of December, we'll try to come out about every week. We need to make some to close out the year 2018. And we apologize. What had happened to us was what's called the midterm elections. We were spending an inordinate amount of time on the political part of our broadcast here at WBRN, the Boston Red part, and working with as many elections. We're out there modeling those elections, just an enormous amount of time, and covering the debates from sea to shiny shore. That is what happened to us. Good day.